Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories, the quiet hours I never wanted the night shift at Meridian Tower. Nobody does. But when the building manager offered me double pay to cover for Jensen, who'd called in sick 3 nights in a row, I couldn't say no. My rent was due and the extra cash would keep the landlord off my back for another month. Just monitor the cameras, make your rounds every 2 hours, and call if anything seems off, Mr. Harmon had said, sliding the master key card across his desk. Nothing ever happens anyway. That's what everyone says about night security. Nothing ever happens until it does. Meridian Tower is one of those glass and steel monoliths that sprout up in business districts, 48 floors of investment firms, tech startups, and law offices. During the day, it's a hive of activity. At night, it transforms into something else entirely, a vertical ghost town of darkened windows and empty hallways, the only sounds the gentle hum of the HVAC system and the occasional ping of an elevator arriving at a floor where no one waits. The security desk sits in the center of the marble-floored lobby, a circular island of monitors and controls. When I arrived for my first night at 10 p.m., the evening guard, Rodriguez, gave me a quick rundown. Screens 1 through 16 cover the lobby and exterior, he said, pointing at the bank of monitors. 17 through 32 are stairwells and elevators. The rest are hallways, one camera per floor. The system cycles through them automatically, but you can manually select any view. He showed me the access panel for the electronic locks, the emergency protocols binder, and the coffee maker, your best friend for the next 8 hours. Any trouble spots I should know about? I asked. Rodriguez shrugged. It's pretty quiet. Sometimes the cleaning crew stays late, but they're usually gone by midnight. Oh, and the 27th floor has been empty since a store financial moved out last month. Construction starts next week for the new tenant, so there shouldn't be anyone up there. I nodded, trying to memorize everything as Rodriguez gathered his things. One last thing, he said, pausing at the revolving door. The cameras on 27 sometimes glitch, probably because of the construction prep. If you see something weird, just switch to another feed and come back. Usually fixes itself. And then I was alone, surrounded by the soft blue glow of security monitors, the vast empty building looming above me. The first few hours passed uneventfully. I made my initial rounds at midnight, walking the perimeter of the lobby, checking that the emergency exits were secure, riding the elevator to random floors and walking their corridors. Everything was as it should be, silent, empty, ordinary. Back at the desk, I poured myself another cup of coffee and settled in to watch the monitors. The system was set to cycle through all 64 cameras, showing each feed for about 10 seconds before moving to the next. Most showed nothing but still, empty spaces, corridors with motion sensor lights dimmed to half power, stairwells with exit signs casting a red glow, the parking garage with its neat rows of executives' cars. It was during one of these cycles, somewhere around 2 a.m., that I first noticed something odd. The monitor had switched to camera 47, 27th floor, east corridor, when I saw movement. Just a flicker at the edge of the frame, like a shadow passing. I sat up straighter, suddenly alert. By the time my brain registered what I'd seen, the system had already moved on to the next camera. I used the control panel to manually return to camera 47. The hallway was empty, the motion sensor lights now at full brightness from whatever had triggered them moments before. Probably just the HVAC causing a shadow, I muttered to myself, but I made a note in the log anyway. Movement detected on 27E at 2:04 a.m. Investigated via camera. Nothing found. I continued watching the cycle of cameras, paying special attention when it returned to the 27th floor. Nothing seemed amiss, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Rodriguez's casual mention of camera glitches on that floor kept replaying in my mind. At 2:30 a.m., I decided to include the 27th floor in my rounds. Better to check in person than spend the night jumping at shadows on a monitor. The elevator ride was unnervingly quiet. I watched the numbers climb, 2021, 22. When it reached 27, the doors slid open to reveal a dark reception area. The motion sensors detected me and the lights flickered on, illuminating a space stripped of furniture and identity. Plastic sheeting covered parts of the floor, and the walls were marked with tape where partitions would soon be installed. I stepped out, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. "Security," I called out, more to break the silence than anything else. My voice sounded small in the cavernous space. The east corridor stretched before me, flanked by glass-walled conference rooms and offices. As I walked, the lights activated ahead of me and dimmed behind. I checked each room methodically, finding nothing but dust and the occasional construction tool. Near the end of the corridor, I paused. Something felt wrong. The air seemed heavier here, colder. I shone my flashlight into the last office, empty like all the others. I was about to turn back when I heard it, a soft scraping sound like something being dragged across the floor. It came from around the corner in the north corridor. "Hello," I called out, my hand moving to the radio at my belt. "This is security. Identify yourself." Silence. I rounded the corner cautiously. The north corridor was darker, the motion sensors slower to respond. As the lights gradually brightened, I saw that this area was in a more advanced state of demolition. Sections of drywall had been removed, exposing the building's skeletal framework. Plastic sheeting hung like shrouds, stirring gently in the air currents from the ventilation system. That must have been what I heard, I told myself. Just plastic sheeting moving in the air. I was halfway down the corridor when the lights went out, not just dimmed out. Complete darkness, save for the beam of my flashlight and the faint red glow of an exit sign at the far end. I reached for my radio. "Base, this is Walker. I've got a power issue on 27 North. Lights just cut out." Static answered me. "Base, do you copy? Rodriguez mentioned camera glitches on this floor. Might be related to an electrical problem." More static, then a sound that made my skin crawl, a whisper so faint I couldn't make out the words, buried in the white noise. I clicked the radio off, suddenly certain I didn't want to hear whatever was trying to come through. The rational part of my brain suggested a simple explanation: old wiring being prepped for renovation, causing shorts in both the lighting and communication systems. I should just head back to the elevator, note it in the log, and inform maintenance in the morning. But I didn't move toward the exit. Instead, I found myself advancing further down the darkened corridor, my flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. That's when I saw it, a door at the end of the hall, standing slightly ajar. According to the floor plans I'd reviewed, that should have been a utility room. Why would it be open? As I approached, I noticed something else. A thin line of light seeping from beneath the door, not the harsh fluorescent light of the offices, but a softer, yellowish glow. I hesitated, then pushed the door open wider. It wasn't a utility room. It was an office, a fully furnished office that looked like it had been plucked from decades earlier. Wood-paneled walls, a massive desk with a leather chair, filing cabinets, even a coat rack with a hat hanging from it. An old brass lamp on the desk provided the warm light I'd seen. None of this should have been here. The floor had been completely cleared for renovation. "Hello," I called, my voice barely above a whisper now. The room remained silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been occupied just moments before I opened the door. The leather chair was angled away from the desk, as if someone had just risen from it. A fountain pen lay across an open ledger, the ink still wet. I stepped inside, drawn by curiosity and confusion. The air felt different here, stale, with an underlying scent I couldn't identify, something earthy and vaguely unpleasant. The ledger on the desk caught my attention. Rows and columns of handwritten figures, dates going back decades. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of the entries. They appeared to be financial records, but the notations beside each entry were in some kind of shorthand I didn't recognize. Except for the last entry, dated that very day. Next to it, written in fresh ink that still glistened under the lamplight, were the words, "He's here, watching." A chill ran through me. I straightened up, suddenly aware of how quiet it had become. Not just quiet, silent. The ever-present hum of the building systems that had been my constant companion all night was gone. I turned to leave and froze. The door was closed. I was certain I had left it open. I was certain. My heart hammering, I crossed to the door and grasped the handle. It turned easily in my hand, but the door wouldn't budge, as if something on the other side was holding it shut. "Hey," I shouted, pounding on the door. "Is someone there?" "Open this door." No response, but as I pressed my ear against the wood, I heard something, breathing. Slow, measured breathing, just on the other side. I jerked away from the door, panic rising in my throat. I fumbled for my radio again. "Base, this is Walker. I'm trapped on 27 North Corridor and office. Someone's here. I need backup now." The radio crackled to life, but instead of Rodriguez's voice, I heard that whisper again, closer now, more distinct. "You shouldn't be here, Walker." The voice knew my name. I dropped the radio, backing away until I hit the desk. The lamp flickered, the light dimming momentarily before steadying again. That's when I noticed the photographs on the wall, dozens of them, in simple black frames. In the confusion and shock of finding the office, I hadn't paid them any attention. Now, as I looked more closely, I felt the blood drain from my face. They were photographs of the building, Meridian Tower, at various stages of its existence. The earliest showed its construction in the 1970s, steel beams rising from a concrete foundation. Others depicted the completed tower through the decades, its surroundings changing as the city grew around it. But it was the most recent photos that turned my blood to ice. Photos of the lobby, taken from the security desk. Photos of the corridors I had just patrolled. Photos of the 27th floor under renovation. And in each one, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, a figure. Shadowy, indistinct, always at the edge of the frame or partially obscured. In some, just a dark smudge that could be dismissed as a flaw in the image. In others, more clearly humanoid but with proportions that seemed wrong. The last photo in the row was of the security desk tonight, me, sitting there looking at the monitors, taken just hours ago from a vantage point that shouldn't have been possible. And behind me, standing in the shadows where the lobby cameras wouldn't catch it, was a tall, thin silhouette. I heard a sound then, the scrape of metal on metal, and turned to see the filing cabinet drawers opening, one by one, as if invisible hands were searching through them. "Who's there?" My voice cracked with fear. "What do you want?" The drawers stopped moving. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees in an instant. I could see my breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. The lamp on the desk flickered again, and in that moment of near darkness, I saw it, a reflection in the window behind the desk. Not my reflection, but something else. Something tall and gaunt, with limbs too long and a head that tilted at an impossible angle. I whirled around, but there was nothing there, just the empty office and the closed door. My flashlight, which I had placed on the desk, suddenly went out. The lamp followed a second later, plunging the room into darkness save for the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the window. In that dim light, I saw the ledger on the desk begin to turn its own pages, flipping rapidly as if caught in a strong wind, though the air was still. It stopped abruptly, and I found myself stepping forward despite my terror, drawn to see what page it had opened to. A list of names, hundreds of them, filling the page and continuing on to the next. Some had been crossed out, others had dates beside them. With mounting horror, I realized the most recent name on the list, added in that same wet ink, was my own. David Walker. The date beside it was tomorrow. A sound behind me, a long, rattling inhale like someone drawing breath after being underwater. I spun around. The darkness in the corner of the room was deeper, denser somehow. As I watched, it seemed to pull together, condensing into a form that absorbed what little light there was rather than reflecting it. I backed away until I hit the window. The glass was cold against my back, cold enough to burn. I couldn't take my eyes off the darkness as it continued to gather itself, taking on a more defined shape, the shape I had glimpsed in the window's reflection. My hand fumbled at my belt for anything I could use as a weapon, finding only the master key card. Useless, the shape moved toward me, not walking but gliding, as if the distance between us was contracting. I could make out more details now, the two long arms ending in hands with too many fingers, the way its head sat at an angle that would snap a human spine, the absence where a face should be. It stopped just feet away from me. I could feel its presence like a physical weight, pressing the air from my lungs. The darkness around it seemed to pulse, expanding and contracting like slow, deliberate breathing. And then it spoke, not with a voice but directly into my mind, the words forming as if they were my own thoughts. "You saw the footage, you came looking, they always do." Images flashed through my head, other security guards, other nights, other encounters in this same room that shouldn't exist. Jensen, my predecessor, backing away in terror. Rodriguez, younger, pleading with something I couldn't see. The building needs to feed. The higher it reaches, the hungrier it gets. More images. Construction workers falling from scaffolding, their bodies twisting in ways bodies shouldn't. Office workers alone at night, sensing something watching from the darkened glass of their computer screens. Maintenance staff disappearing into elevator shafts that suddenly seemed bottomless. Someone has to keep the ledger, someone has to watch, someone has to choose. I understood then. The ledger was a record of sacrifices. The building, or whatever dwelled within it, required payment. The names were offerings. "I won't," I gasped, finding my voice at last. "I won't choose anyone." The darkness seemed to smile, though it had no face to smile with. "You already have by coming here, by seeing the choices made." It reached for me with those two long hands, fingers unfurling like tendrils of smoke. I closed my eyes, bracing for whatever would come next, but the touch never came. Instead, I heard the door open. I opened my eyes to see the office transformed. The wood paneling was gone, replaced by bare drywall marked for demolition. The desk, the filing cabinets, the photographs, all gone. I was standing in an empty space, my flashlight on the floor where I had dropped it, still shining. The entity was gone too, but I could feel its absence like a wound in the air. I didn't hesitate, I ran. Through the open door, down the corridor, past the fluttering plastic sheeting. The lights came on as I moved, motion sensors responding normally. I reached the elevator and jabbed the call button repeatedly, as if that would make it arrive faster. When the doors finally opened, I nearly wept with relief. I pressed the button for the lobby and sagged against the wall as the elevator began its descent, but as the car passed the 20th floor, it slowed, then stopped. The lights flickered. "No," I whispered, "please no." The car began to rise again, the floor indicator climbing, 21, 22, 23. I pressed the emergency button, then every floor button, trying to override whatever was happening. Nothing responded. 27. The elevator stopped. The doors did not open. In the polished metal of the elevator doors, I could see my reflection, and behind me, emerging from the wall of the elevator car like it was passing through a membrane, the same dark figure from the office. The building has chosen, it communicated, and I felt something cold and insubstantial wrap around my throat. You will keep the ledger now, you will watch, you will choose. The elevator plummeted. They found me the next morning in the basement level, the only survivor of what the official report called a catastrophic elevator malfunction. The car had fallen 48 floors, the cables severed by what engineers would later determine was metal fatigue combined with an electrical surge that disabled all safety systems. I was in the hospital for weeks, multiple fractures, internal injuries, trauma they couldn't fully explain. The doctors called my survival a miracle. I didn't tell them about the voice I still heard in my dreams, showing me the names, teaching me how to keep the ledger. I didn't tell them about the shadow I sometimes glimpsed in reflective surfaces, watching, waiting for me to return to my duties. I didn't tell them that I'd received a job offer while still in my hospital bed, a permanent position as night security manager at Meridian Tower, at triple my previous salary. Or that I'd accepted. I've been back at work for 3 months now. The elevator has been repaired, the investigation closed, the incident fading from memory for everyone except me. I sit at the security desk each night, watching the monitors, making my rounds. Everything looks normal to the casual observer, but I know better. I see the patterns now, the subtle distortions in certain camera feeds, the momentary glitches that aren't glitches at all, but glimpses of something moving through the building's hidden spaces. I keep the ledger updated as I was taught. I make the selections as required. I watch the footage afterward, filing it away in the cabinet that exists only in that impossible office on the 27th floor. Sometimes new security guards ask about the rumors, the whispers of strange occurrences, unexplained noises, feelings of being watched. I tell them what Mr. Harmon told me on my first day. Nothing ever happens here, I say with a smile that doesn't reach my eyes. Just monitor the cameras, make your rounds every 2 hours, and call if anything seems off. And as they nod and turn away, I silently add their names to my mental list of possibilities. The building is always hungry, always watching through my eyes now. Always waiting for the quiet hours when the lights dim and the boundaries between what should and shouldn't exist grow thin. If you ever find yourself working the night shift in a glass tower, pay attention to the surveillance footage. Watch for the glitches, the shadows that move against the flow of time. Listen for the whispers in the static of your radio. And if you see something, if you're drawn to investigate, remember my warning: once you start watching, you'll never stop being watched. The building always finds someone to keep the ledger. Next time, it might be you.